What's up? I'm Jude Crimes, and today we're talking about the Mississippi Goons. So, according to the news, on January 24th, 2023, in Braxton, Mississippi, 6 police officers who call themselves the Goon Squad tortured Michael Jenkins and Eddie Parker over the course of an hour and a half, shooting Jenkins in the mouth and shattering his jaw, and sexually assaulting Parker.
But what happened that night in January of 2023 is that these 5 former deputies and 1 police officer entered this home, no warrant, no evidence that anything was happening there. And they proceeded to torture these men for hours using food, at one point a sex toy, and threatening an execution. And that's how one of the men, Michael Jenkins, ended up being shot in the mouth by one of the officers, who is the officer who has been sentenced to 20 years. So this is heinous, doesn't even really describe how awful all of this is. And on top of all of what I just described, they then tried to plant evidence, guns, drugs on these men. And it took months for these 2 victims, Michael Jenkins and Eddie Parker, to be believed. And so, there's relief that we're here now. But there's another world in which that actually wouldn't have been the case.
It's sick.
6 former Mississippi police officers were back in court. They've already pleaded guilty to federal charges of torturing 2 black men. Well, now they are staring down state charges. Prosecutors say the suspects, all of whom are white, called themselves the Goon Squad because of the excessive force that they've used. CNET's Ryan Young, he's following this. He joins us now. Ryan, can you talk us through this next round of charges that these men are facing? And also, you spoke with the victims.
Yeah, Kate, this has been heart-wrenching for those victims. They, for quite some time, have been trying to get anyone to listen to them about what they experienced on that night. 2 hours of torture. When you think about having oil spilled on your body, eggs thrown at you while you recall the N-word over and over. For quite some time, these men were trying to get someone to pay attention. Now, look, this is the first time we've actually seen these men in court because that first case was a federal trial. And as you know, you can't get cameras in there. But this is a state court case. In fact, I can see on another monitor, this is pretty much wrapped up. You can see the video there of these men walking into court. They call themselves the Goon Squad, and it was their job to go out and dispense justice the way they wanted to. In fact, at one point, they even tried to sexually assault these men, and they used their tasers over and over again to see who had the most powerful taser. But listen to the men involved in this case and the horror they had to go through.
I crawled here to this spot, and they started beating me here and tasing me. As you can see, blood spots and all. And my blood spots there.
It hurt. I'm embarrassed.
Yeah, that was Eddie Parker and Michael Jenkins. When you think about Michael Jenkins, at one point, one of these officers who's admitted to this took out a gun, and they believed they had cleared the gun. They put it in his mouth, and they pulled the trigger. He cleared the gun again and put it back in his mouth and pulled the trigger. At that point, it shot through his tongue and exited his neck. That's why he has trouble talking to this day. He'll be dealing with this for the rest of his life. Now these charges are moving forward. Everyone involved in this case said they've never seen something like this in law enforcement. And you, of course, asked the question, what happened to the sheriff? The sheriff said he had no idea this Goon Squad was operating inside his department.
The day of justice has finally come.
That's right.
For the Rankin County Goon Squad.
The Goon Squad, a nickname federal prosecutors say some white former Mississippi law enforcement officers gave themselves for their alleged willingness to use excessive force and not report. Now 6 of them facing sentencing after pleading guilty to charges in connection with torturing 2 black men, Michael Jenkins and Eddie Parker, for nearly 2 hours back in January of 2023.
They've undergone, from what you heard in there, a substantial amount of trauma.
The officers had entered the home the victims were in without a warrant and proceeded to use racial slurs, kick, tase, and attempt sexual assault and intimidate the victims with a firearm. The assault ended with Jenkins getting shot in the mouth, and then the officers attempted to cover it all up. The courtroom filled with emotion at sentencing today. Michael Jenkins' mother, Mary Jenkins, giving a victim impact statement in court, saying in part, "I want the same consideration for these people as they gave my son when they put the gun in his mouth and pulled the trigger." And the parents of one of the convicted deputies, Hunter Elward, also making a statement. "Nothing prepares a parent for this. What happened shouldn't have happened. There are so many more victims than the people in this room. Hunter is going to take and own what he did." And his son did. Hunter Elward stood up and directly addressed the 2 men he victimized. "I'm so sorry. I don't want to get too personal with you, Michael. There's no telling what you've seen. I'm so sorry that I caused that. I hate myself for it. I hate that I gave you that. I accept all responsibility. Hunter Elwood parents spoke to CNN shortly after their son's apology and his sentencing of 20 years plus 1 month.
What happened to those two gentlemen he could not live with anymore?
One of the victims, Eddie Parker, told Elwood in court that he forgave him.
I had to forgive him because, I mean, deep down inside, I know, what he did wasn't something that he done, solely on his thoughts.
But Michael Jenkins said it didn't mean a damn thing to him.
I got shot.
Jenkins' older brother still reeling from what happened to his brother.
I couldn't do this to nobody. I couldn't stand to watch it being done to nobody.
The attorney for Jenkins and Parker said there was some overall solace in today's sentencing.
Finally, they could see justice occur and to see their tormentors know that they won't be back on the street.
Okay, so as far as the charges and sentencing go, charges in August 2023, the 6 officers pled guilty to 16 felonies, including civil rights conspiracy, deprivation of rights under the color of law, discharge of a firearm during a crime of violence, conspiracy to obstruction of justice, and obstruction of justice. On March 19th, 2024, Deputy Hunter Edward was sentenced to 20 years in prison. The same day, Jeffrey Middleton was sentenced to 17.5 years in prison. On March 20th, Christian Dedman, who was described as a deputy, was sentenced to 40 years in prison, while Deputy Daniel Okudi, I don't know how to say that, received 17 years in prison. On March 21st, Brett McAlpin, who was also described as a deputy, was sentenced to more than 17 years in prison. The same day, the final sentencing in a federal case was held down. The former Richland officer Joshua Hartfield had been sentenced to 10 years in prison.
And the final 2 white Mississippi officers have been sentenced for breaking into a home without a warrant and torturing 2 black men. Former Deputy Brett McAlpin was the 4th highest ranking officer at the Rankin County Sheriff's Office. The judge sentenced him to about 27 years in prison. Richland police officer Joshua Hartfield was given a sentence of about 10 years. The other 4 officers were sentenced earlier this week with sentences ranging from 17 to 40 years.
All in all, my final thoughts on this: it's a tragedy. I'm glad that nobody died. I don't know why they did this. I guess they thought that they could get away with it because they're on the police force. They tried covering it up. They tried to say that Jenkins and Parker was facing, like, they had like drugs or something like that. But like that was dropped, whatever. Yeah, like stuff like this happens all the time. Like, just because like there's a few bad apples on a tree, which like in every situation there's always like bad apples in a tree, it doesn't mean like the whole police force is like this. You got some good people and you got some bad people, and that's pretty much with everything. So I'm glad that, like I said, I'm glad no one died. Hopefully they sue. I think they said that they were suing for like 400 million. So hopefully they sue and they win, and become millionaires from this. So, but all in all, everybody stay safe. Everybody have a good day. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.